Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Russia is adding gold at an alarming rate. We're going to discover why and what this means for you and I. Let's explore. What you're looking at here is an image from inside the vaults of the Russian gold reserves. There's a couple of different pictures here I'm going to show you of them handling the gold there. These are from RT. Pretty interesting indeed to see them actually working with the gold there in Russia. It is amazing indeed to see how much gold many of these nations have been adding for quite a number of years. We're going to be referencing an article here from thinbold.com that talks about Russia's gold and foreign exchange reserves, and they've hit some record highs amid an intense 2021. If you enjoy videos like this where I discuss the news of other nations adding gold to their holdings or about precious metals in general, both related to science, technology, as well as the markets, and a lot of interesting stuff about precious metals we talk about here in this channel. I hope you will consider subscribing and maybe pressing that thumbs up button. It's just a suggestion. It does help get the word out there, trying to grow the channel here, so I appreciate any assistance in that regard and to interact with the channel. I very much appreciate all the viewers. So let's move forward here. The Russia's gold and forex reserves, they hit that record high. So Russia's foreign currency reserves increased by 0.7% in the week ending December the 24th, hitting $630.5 billion in foreign currency reserves. And that tells us something here, folks. It's not just dollars, it's other currencies out there as well. As per the regulator, the weekly increase in the country's overseas reserves was $4.2 billion in monetary terms. A planned purchase of foreign currency along with a favorable market evaluation is said to have triggered the spike. The reserves hit a new high of $626.3 billion in the last month, representing a weekly increase of $4.1 billion according to the most recent figures from the Russian Central Bank. The Central Bank of Russia and the government have access to Russia's international reserves, which are highly liquid foreign assets consisting of monetary gold, foreign currencies, and special drawing rights. Notably, Russia has the fifth largest foreign exchange reserves in the world. And so that alone is pretty alarming, and that tells us something here. And what it means is, Russia is preparing to diversify itself in case they make a move in Ukraine. They have thousands of troops and equipment aligned at the border in Crimea and along the border with Ukraine. Russia keeps stockpiling gold and foreign currencies, and that's something they're continuing to do. They were forced to spend $250 billion to bail out the economy amid the 2014 oil price crisis. Their reserves plummeted to their lowest level since 2008. However, Russian gold and foreign currency reserves have almost doubled in the intervening period. In my research for this article, I saw another piece that was talked about in 2015, how they immediately started adding more gold to the reserves in 2015. Amid what was happening, especially with quantitative easing round 3, I think many of these countries, especially the BRICS nations, are certainly considering making themselves more independent from the top world reserve currency, that being the dollar. Holdings have surpassed the $500 billion target level established by the regulator in June 2019 and have stayed over that level ever since then. Despite the negative effect of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy, which compelled the government to raise expenditures to help firms and individuals, the holdings increased by 7.5% to $595.8 billion in 2020. That's 95 $0.8 billion more than the target. So they're increasing. And I'd be very curious to see what the United States' foreign currency holdings are. I guess it's probably not nearly as much because we have the dollar, we control the dollar, and that is the top currency in the world. 31-year high in gold holdings in 2021 is what Russia has here. In order to boost their foreign currency reserves, central banks around the globe are boosting their gold holdings, which have seemingly brought the total to a 31-year high in 2021 as a collective. International research group of the gold industry, the World Gold Council, claims that central banks have amassed 4,500 tons of gold in the last decade alone. That's remarkable. You think about it, that is half of the total gold reserves, or more than half of the total gold reserves that we have in the United States. At the end of September, the reserves amounted to almost 36,000 tons, the highest level since 1990, and a 15% increase over a decade earlier. Now remember, we saw inflation in 1990. We saw, the economic hardship there as well. And so that means we very well could be heading there again. And I think that is why more of these banks are holding gold. Despite the fact that the Federal Reserve of the United States is beginning to tighten its control on lending, other central banks are continuing their transition away from the dollar in response to global worries about the dollar-based monetary framework. It is under threat. It is essentially one of those things where the dollar is loosening its grip. The United States is loosening its grip on being the top reserve currency. And other nations know it, and they're working hard to add more gold and other currencies to try to wean themselves off the dollar. And we're seeing that, and I think we're seeing it, and that's what this means for Russia in doing it. Now, share of gold in the foreign reserves compared to other things out there, we can see that Russia is fairly high. It's about 20-some-odd%. So they hold a fairly high amount of gold. Kazakhstan, over 60% of their foreign reserves are in gold. And we know Turkey has been adding more gold as well too. Kyrgyzstan is fairly high. It's actually above Mongolia. But you've heard me talk about Poland adding gold, Hungary, but some of these other nations are too. I'm actually kind of surprised that China is the lowest on this list. But many things out of China, we really don't know if they're telling us the full story. They very well could be adding more gold and have a greater percentage of it. But then again, China does interact a lot with the West. And of course, we know we empower China with labor and for products, for technology and the like. So it wouldn't, in a way, this doesn't surprise me a little bit, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if they have a greater percentage of their share of gold and foreign reserves. The purchasing of gold by emerging market countries, in other words, developing or third world countries, is an example. Thailand purchased 90 tons in the first 9 months of 2021. It's 90 tons. That's pretty amazing for a size of a country that Thailand is. In addition to India with 70 tons and Brazil with 60 tons. So Thailand actually beat India in that regard. It doesn't surprise us in a way that India would have that much, but it is a part of their culture. The thing about it, you have nations like India, China, and Turkey, to where gold is literally a part of their culture. Per capita, private gold holdings is pretty amazing how astounding and how commonplace gold is in those countries, not only culturally, but in tandem with having a cultural aspect of it. And they understand the economic impact in their families of having gold in their possession. And even if it's a decorative jewelry piece, it's a store of value, and they can always sell it if they run into hard times. And that's really what it's about, folks. It's a savings account. It's beautiful. The metal is. And so what does this mean for Russia? I think Russia is, in a sense, preparing itself to be more independent away from the dollar, because if sanctions come in, they want to be able to protect themselves from those sanctions. And I think that's one reason why they have been adding more gold and foreign exchanges, because the sanctions can only come in dollars from the United States if they were to invade Ukraine. And that is a possibility that will be coming perhaps as early as the next month. So that's something we should consider, and what role that will play in gold's price overall will be interesting to see if that does occur. I have a feeling it will. And apparently Putin is trying to negotiate and has actually made a call into the United States, which does not happen very often. It has a call into Biden, talk about some of its concessions or what it wants to see happen in negotiations so they do not invade. But the biggest thing that we can do, or that has been threatened to do by the United States, is to impose sanctions. And those sanctions are certainly would hurt even now, even amidst this, but Russia is preparing itself for that and for future offenses that it may take, where they can pretty much be as independent or not rely on the dollar as much. I think it's going to take quite some time. The dollar is so entrenched on global enterprise transactions and the like, how things are transacted in dollars more than any other currency. It's going to be very difficult to stay away, but they're making steps. And every time they add an ounce of gold to their reserves, they further declare independence from the dollar. The dollar, an ever devaluing currency. I hold one of these notes in my hand right now. This is the basis, the foundation is $1, and it is by design and by admission a debt instrument, and it is also designed to decline in value by a certain percentage each year. Right now, it is up greater percentage in decline than they want. That's inflation, folks. That is inflation that is out of their control, at least to a point. And of course, they're trying to prevent it from getting worse, or trying to rein it in, so to speak. But they can only do so much with that. The world does not like it when the dollar gets devalued, and so they're going to try their best to protect themselves. So what does this mean for us? This means for us that we shouldn't be doing the same thing. And the best way to do that, I believe, is to hold some amount of gold in your portfolio. And it doesn't have to be much, but at least something. I think it's good for everybody, even the most ardent silver stackers, because we've seen silver move pretty erratically over the year, and it's actually been to the downside. And gold has too, but it's fallen less than silver has over this past year. But I believe it's incumbent upon us to try to protect ourselves, and the best way to do that, in my view, is to have some gold in your portfolio. And I think we can learn a lesson from our enemies, nations that aren't necessarily friendly to us, but even our friends as well too, and from the United States as well. The United States holds over 8,000 tons of the metal in its reserves, if you believe that is the case. Some people don't believe we have any gold. We know Canada has sold off all of its gold reserves, save for 77 ounces. So there you go. I think it's a wise thing to have a little bit of gold in your portfolio. So there you have it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Hope you found this video useful and interesting. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.